Kamera var precis så.
Locomotive. A locomotion. No, it's not a locomotion. That's Kylie Reno. That's a girl from my country, from Australia, and she's a big star. I'm a little fellow here just playing, but I'm very happy. This train has been held up by John Wayne. It's been held up by Clint Eastwood. It's been held up by Dean Martin. This train's been held up by more stars than anybody else you could ever imagine. So we're going to sing some train songs for you, just for this beautiful old train. Don't take offense, this number 3 over here is over. All along the Delaware Sea dream. Good morning, America, how are you? We'll be back.
Freddie came to Tucson, Arizona and asked us to consider working on something to bring the Reno to Switzerland. They kind of mind-boggling. And I never thought it would happen, but it's here. And he asked me to come over and maybe talk about Western and movies and things, which I really enjoy doing. Because the Reno was actually operating in Carson City at the time and carried many of the fight fans to and from the fight. So we feel that we have a little touch of history with us. In about 1903, one of Edison's cameramen, a fellow named Edwin Porter, photographed the life of a fireman. Now you must realize up until this time, the objects photographed were still just couples dancing and vaudevilles, little pieces of vaudeville. But he filmed the life of an American fireman and all of its thrills, running to the fire, fighting fires. And based on the success of that, he made, from a very cheap novel, a picture called The Great Train Robbery. The Great Train Robbery was revolutionary in the fact that it introduced narration to the American film, or to films. And the outdoor drama really began. Photographing the horse and the train and the cowboy was a favorite subject in the countryside, and the Western was evolving because it was the simplest way to create drama and action. The problem with Westerns were they were Easterners. They were made in the New Jersey countryside. And after that had happened for a great deal of time, why the people began to realize they were seeing the same tree and the same scenery in all the outdoor dramas. Synonymous with the American Western. And the Western holds a very special place in the American life. It is the source, it being the source that was our history and the folklore of our country. All of the stars of the West and Western movies, none shone more brightly than the railroad. The history of the American Railroad parallelized the Republic itself. Both were created through historic struggle. Each in a sense created the other, free government and open country, offering boundless opportunity to enterprising men. And so they built a nation. In the history of railroading Western movies, the Reno has its own special place. Built 7 years after the American Civil War, she has truly participated in not only the real history of our country, but in the motion picture history. The Reno was built in Pennsylvania and sold to the Virginia Trucking Railroad in Nevada, where it hauled millions and millions of dollars worth of gold and silver bullion and hundreds of thousands of tourists and travelers between Virginia City, Carson City, and those coming and going from the areas of San Francisco. It also had its share of harrowing experiences and thrills. In 1872, on an early morning run from Carson City, the Comstock-bound train pulled by the Reno approached the American Flat Tunnel, as it was called, and the engineer, Bartholomew, unable to stop the train, went right on into the burning tunnel and decided the only way to get out of it is just to go through it. So he opened the throttle of the Reno and to full blast and steamed through 650 feet of burning tunnel, and made it clear and easy, never without any injury or damage to humans or the train. So it's quite an experience for the old girl. The Reno is perhaps one of the most beloved of all locomotives of the early West, probably the most photographed. She had antler horns mounted on her headlight, and there was candlesticks. And she pulled the last train out of Virginia City in 1938. Because the larger locomotives were coming into play, the small 440 could only haul short distances, and was relegated ultimately to the gold fields and to the lumbering operations of both California and Nevada. As the bigger engines came into play, the 440 was relegated to this type of work. So in 1945, after she had been sort of decommissioned in 38, the Reno was sold to MGM Studios, one of the most prestigious motion picture studios in the United States. And if life in the gold fields was exciting, nothing was so exciting as to what lay ahead for the Reno. As she became a star of many of the great motion pictures, that was produced by MGM. Union Pacific, Annie Get Your Gun, Jesse James, How the West Was Won, Cimarron, just to name a few, sold to a group of investors at a rather substantial amount of money, more than I could have afforded to pay for it. I was also there to buy wardrobe for our operation in Tucson, so I went about buying wardrobe, and before I was through loading, the man who, Mr. Quitz, who operated the auction, came to me and said, "Would you like to buy the Reno?" And I said, "Well, I certainly would, but I certainly can't afford what you have gotten for it." So I made him. He said, "Well, our offer, the other proposition fell through, and we have an opening for a bid." So I made him an offer. He took it, and I ran to the phone, called my banker in Arizona, and asked him if I could do this. And he said, "You're crazy, but go ahead and do it anyway." And I did it. And my stockholders and my board of directors and the bank thought we were a little loony, but nonetheless, it worked out very well.